Hi everyone. The so called biggest tech event of the year unfolded on September 12th as Apple launched the iPhone 15 series. I'll of course talk about what all they launched, but more importantly, I'll share my opinion about these products considering the Indian perspective. While Apple has been increasing their prices in India exorbitantly with every coming generation of iPhones, Indians seem to be buying them more and more. This probably owes to the weird status symbol that Apple products have developed a reputation of in our country. Apart from that, the gradual shift of the smartphones buyer market towards higher end phones and the relatively good deals on some iPhones during the September October online sales have greatly benefited Apple. Now let us talk about the iPhone 15 series. Apple launched four iPhones in the September 12 Wonderlust event: iPhone 15, 15 Plus, 15 Pro, and 15 Pro Max. The biggest update this year came after the push from the European Union, as all the iPhones this year come with USB Type C, something that is better than the age old Lightning cable in terms of both data transfer and charging speeds. But there is a catch in that which I'm going to mention soon. Let us first quickly get aware of the ridiculous prices of these phones in our country. The iPhone 15 and 15 Plus start at the same prices as their 14 counterparts from previous year. The 15 128 GB is priced at 79,900 while the 15 Plus is priced at 89,900. On the other hand, the 15 Pro sees a price jump of at least 5,000, causing it to start at 1,34,900. The 15 Pro Max, on the other hand, has got rid of the 128 GB variant and now starts at 256 GB variant with a whooping price of 1,59,900. Anyway, the iPhone 15 and 15 Plus got the pill-shaped cutout which they like to call the dynamic island. Apart from that, it also got the 48 megapixel camera sensor from last year 14 Pro series. With that, all the iPhones have shifted to the dynamic island and 48 megapixel camera sensors, bidding adieu to the notch they invented in 2017 with the iPhone 10 and the 12 megapixel sensor they have been using since the iPhone 6s that came in 2016. But it still continues with the 60 Hz refresh rate, which I believe is criminal for a phone that costs a minimum of 80 to 90,000 in the year 2023. People argue that 60 Hz feels smooth in iPhones. They sure do when you compare them to some budget or mid-range Android phone, owing to their much more powerful chipsets and smooth animations. But I beg to strongly disagree if anyone says they feel any bit as smooth as the 120 Hz refresh rate equipped phones that we get in similar or even half the price. Also, they have carried on last year's chip, that is the A16 Bionic. I don't have many complaints against that, as A16 is still the most powerful chip in any smartphone in the market, second only to the A17 Pro they brought in the 15 Pro series. A slight lesser price considering the continuance of the same chip would have been appreciated though. Overall, I believe it is a much better upgrade than the transition we saw last year from the regular iPhone 13 to 14, which was not even worth being called an upgrade. Next up are the Pro phones, the iPhone 15 Pro and 15 Pro Max. They got what I believe had become the most essential change needed in the Pro models, especially the Pro Max: decrease in weight. The 14 Pro was probably the heaviest 6.1-inch phone in the world, and the 14 Pro Max felt like carrying a piece of brick in your pockets, owing to their fingerprint attracting stainless steel frames. This year, Apple has moved to a titanium frame, which they hilariously marketed as the material they used in spacecrafts. Regardless, titanium has enabled them to make the Pro iPhones lighter by about 20 grams, which I believe is a move in the right direction. Apart from that, we saw an upgrade in the chipset in the form of the A17 Pro. This happens to be the world's first 3 nanometer architecture based chipset on a smartphone. That is a beautiful technological feat Apple deserves credit for. In real world, it would translate to more power and better battery efficiency, which were anyway great. Also, Apple advertised some very good upgrades in gaming performance and introduced some heavy AAA titled games such as Resident Evil 4, which would be available in these Pro models. They also talked about hardware based ray tracing, which they could do using the new, very powerful 6 core GPU that they have put in this chip. Again, in the real world, that would smoothen the gaming experience by adding frames to areas where it is needed very efficiently. Next up, we can talk about the cameras. They have introduced a new 48 megapixel sensor to the Pro models, which is larger and slightly better than the magnificent cameras that were already there in the 14 Pro models. The camera software uses this large sensor to provide 28mm and 35mm focal length options along with the default 24mm. What this means is you would get an option to move to 1.2 times and 1.5 times zoom by tapping on the one time button or set either of the three as default for whoever needs them. The 12 megapixel ultra wide lens gets a new coating and a macro shooting mode, but otherwise it isn't changing much. This year, after a long time, only the most expensive Pro Max gets an additional feature that is missing in the Pro. While the 15 Pro continues with the 3 times optical zoom lens, the Pro Max gets a 5 times optical zoom. They have added this through what they call a tetra prism lens, which is basically a fancy name for the mechanism to reflect the image on 4 mirrors, causing it to reach the 5 times zoom capability, or more technically speaking, a focal length equivalent to big 120mm lenses that we use in our DSLRs. Apple has added the option to directly record 4K 60fps ProRes video into an external SSD in the 15 Pros. They could enable it through the fast USB 3.0 port that they have now added to the 15 lineup. But remember I mentioned that there is a catch? Well, only the 15 Pros get the USB 3.0 port with a 10 Gbps file transfer speed, while the regular 15s get USB 2.0 port with a speed of about 500 Mbps, which is pretty much same as the transfer speeds we got through the Lightning port. Well, Apple just being Apple. Now that I've shared all the information, I would come back to the sole point of making this video. How relevant are these phones in our country? For whatever reasons it be, these phones are priced ridiculously. The problem is not Apple pricing the 15 Pro Max at $1199. The problem is $1199 translates to 99,000 rupees, while the 15 Pro Max is priced at 1,59,000 rupees. I'm not sure how far we can blame the taxes, now that the 15 models are assembled right in the factories in India. To pay 60,000 rupees more than the actual price of the phone, or rather we can say paying a 60% higher price than what the phone is actually worth in US and a few other countries, does not make sense to me. Now we are days away from the online festival sales. Those are famous especially for bringing the prices of iPhones down to, as per my research, the regular prices in US. Those are the times when buying these phones actually make any sense at all. With that, I'll give some suggestions on what to get from among those two. The iPhone that will make the maximum sense in this year's sale is going to be the iPhone 13. It is supposed to be available at around 40 to 45,000 rupees for the base 128GB variant. Apart from that, if someone needs a bigger screen, they can go for the 14 Plus, which will sell for around 60,000. The 12 would not be a reasonable purchase, as the 128GB variant would cost around 40,000, bringing it very close to the price of 13. I would also not recommend the 14 much, as it would be around 5 to 6,000 more expensive than the 13. These phones are way too similar to even justify that amount. One could argue that 14 will receive another year of software update, but honestly, I'm very skeptical about that, considering the fact that both these phones run on the same chip. Also, the 13 will get updates for another 3 to 4 years, which is more than the average period of time for which people hold on to their phones too. Rather, one could invest in a greater storage variant, let's say the 256GB, or you could get a better charger too. Well, that is all the information I had to share. Thank you if you have watched this video till now. Hope to catch you guys in the next one. Peace.